welcome to Northern Adventure. And you know, a lot of times you want to go ahead and use some tools, or you need to use some tools. Maybe you need a new tool, and one of the tools I need is to get rid of these, something to get rid of these no-see-ums. Wow, they've been bad lately. But I don't have anything to get rid of them. I don't know if anyone does. In any case, sometimes you need to get a new tool, or you need a backup tool, and you take a look at the Home Depot or wherever you buy your tools, Lowe's, Menards, Ace Hardware, online somewhere, and you look at the price and you think, that's just way too high. And the other thing you think, or at least I think, they don't make things like they used to. You know, I'm sick of spending hundreds of dollars for something just to have it fall apart, not perform the way it needs to, not be reliable. That's just not something I enjoy. Well, I've got a surprise for you. I needed a new tool. I needed a backup tool for a tool I already use and rely on all the time. And I got one. It costs very little, and I think it's going to be a good addition to the shop. I'm going to show you what that is coming up. So for several years, the chainsaw that's been my primary go-to tool for forestry work, cutting firewood, removing dead timber, knocking down trees from areas that they're in the way of various things, that's been my Husqvarna 262 XP from 1991. It's been an excellent, reliable saw. I didn't even spend that much money on this saw. I think I told you in a previous video that this saw I was able to purchase just for $100 from an older gentleman who just didn't have the strength to use this saw any longer, and it's been really, really reliable. We've been cutting lots of firewood with it over a number of years, all species. Works really good. So my number one saw number one, the saw that goes to work for me every time I need to cut, has been this saw, the 262 XP. My backup saw was a bit smaller, and it was the Milwaukee M18 chainsaw with a 16-inch bar, which I really liked, but proved to be not particularly durable, and that was something we covered in a previous episode as well. I have a third saw, but it's not of the same class. It's even smaller and less powerful than the Milwaukee M18 was, and that's a Homelight 120 XL Super. I think I've got that model mostly right. It's a small saw, mostly designed, and I think best for trimming branches, small tasks, but as the main saw for cutting firewood or moving trees, cutting down trees, it might be underpowered. So I needed something bigger as a backup, and I now have that. And so what is it that I bought? Well, it's a brand that you may not be familiar with any longer because it's disappeared, more or less. McCulloch chainsaws once was the industry leader, I would say, in the US for chainsaws, along with Homelight, but McCulloch was the one everyone thought of when it came to chainsaws. And for just a few dollars, I was able to get this beast. And at first glance, I couldn't even tell what model it was. McCulloch made several models that looked just like this in the mid-1980s and early 1990s before they disappeared from the industry, more or less. This could have been a ProMac 650, it could have been a ProMac 610, or it could have been a ProMac 605, or it could have been later on, I think they called them Eager Beavers. I'm not sure about the branding change on that. That might appeal to consumers, but I don't think pros would have much thought of using an Eager Beaver out in the woods. Anyway, cute names aside, I had to decode the serial number plate on this to find out what model this actually was, and it turns out it is a 605. So it's a ProMac 605, and that's about a 58cc motor on this versus the 62 on the Husqvarna. Pretty similar in size, a little smaller. I couldn't find any horsepower ratings for this. The horsepower rating on the Husqvarna 262 XP is 4.8 horsepower. No idea what the horsepower comes in at on this McCulloch, but having run it a little bit now, I can say it actually pulls the chain really, really well. It's pretty powerful, it revs really nice. And so let's fire it up and see what it cuts like. Well, that's cutting with the ProMac 605, and actually this is my first time using this saw since we got it about a week ago. There were a few little issues with it, but I couldn't get it started when we first got this saw a week ago. It turned out the spark plug gap was way off, so I reset the gap on the spark plug, and surprisingly that was the only thing that needed to be done, and it fired right up. And so I used some of the gas I currently have mixed up for the Husqvarna, which is a 50-to-1 fuel mix. The owner's manual for the McCulloch says it wants 40-to-1, so I'll be mixing up a new batch of fuel at 40-to-1 for this saw. And all in all, even though I've only cut with it for about a few minutes here and maybe 10 minutes earlier this morning, I'm pretty favorably impressed. Now, one thing about this saw is it's very, very heavy. The Husqvarna 262 XP, which is off camera to my left over there, 4.8 horsepower, 62 cc's, weighs just over 13 pounds. I looked up the specs on the 605, 55, 56, 58 cc's, somewhere in there. Same size bar, but this saw weighs over 18 pounds. So that's more than, a little over 5 pounds more than the Husqvarna. And maybe that's why people switched to Stihl and Husqvarna chainsaws from McCulloch, and maybe that's one of the reasons McCulloch disappeared. Now, McCulloch as a name brand is still out there. I looked them up, and they're owned by Husqvarna. But I don't know if there are any McCulloch branded saws being sold anywhere in the world. I did see there are supposedly some McCulloch saw products out there if you take a look at Husqvarna's McCulloch listings, but I don't know where you'd buy them. I don't know how good they are. I'm not even sure that you would want to if you can get a similar Husky or a Stihl or maybe an Echo. Echo seems to make a pretty good product. There was a time when I thought about buying an Echo saw. But the McCulloch, pretty good. Now I think there's a flaw to this besides the weight. I can think of one flaw, and that is where you fill the bar oil. That is in the worst possible spot. Whoever engineered the location for the bar oil filling location really has never had to fill a bar oil reservoir on a chainsaw. Now, as you know, most saws like the Husqvarna, you flip it over on the side, you have unfettered access to the reservoir. In this case, the chain brake is strategically positioned so you cannot pour bar oil into the reservoir. You just can't. So you have to use a funnel. That seems like a small thing, but if you're out cutting all day long and you're refilling your bar oil reservoir every time you refill the gas, that gets annoying real quick, and you just got to bring a funnel, and that's one more thing to fumble with and possibly lose when you're on the job site or out in the woods. That's just annoying. So that may have been a downside that was enough to annoy people to move people to something like a Stihl or a Husqvarna. That and the weight. But all in all, these have a reputation for extreme reliability, extreme durability, and extreme easiness for maintenance. They come apart very easily, they're very simply engineered, so whatever trade-off you want with the bar oil reservoir to simple engineering for easy maintenance, that may be a trade-off for you. The other thing is you can get these very, very inexpensively if you look around. The 605, 610, 650, the 610s I think are the most common, for $100, maybe less, maybe slightly more. You can pick up a good example of one of these and cut for years versus having to go out and buy a new chainsaw of this caliber or the 262 XP's caliber. You know, you're going to be looking at least $500, but probably $600 or $700 or even $800 or more to get a similar capable saw. And that's a lot of money. So in the used market, you can get an XP 262 if you look around, or a 262 XP if you look around. You can get a ProMac 605 or 610 if you look around. There's probably a few other models out there from other manufacturers. Take a look. These are good saws. I think you'll be happy with them. I'm happy with it. I'm thrilled that this runs as good as it does for the price that it was marked at the estate sale a week ago where we got it. So that's it. Northern Adventure. Got the ProMac 605, glad to have it in the shop, glad to be using it on the job site, and it cuts like a charm. I can't even believe how good it runs, how good it works. Setting the gap on the spark plug was all it took. Simple bit of maintenance. We're going to replace the air filter, clean it up a little bit, mix up a batch of 40-to-1 gas, and we're off and cutting. So this has been Northern Adventure with our new toy, the 605, the ProMac 605. Look for it coming up in more videos as we make firewood and clear things and brush and work on dead trees. We're going to be using this saw a lot, if only to spare the hours on the 262 XP, because I want that saw to last forever as well. So we'll split things up equitably and use the right tool for the job, which you always should do. And the right tool for the job you should do is to hit the like and subscribe button. So we'd appreciate it. Thank you very much. Bye.